Hello and welcome to the Mike's DIY Tips channel on YouTube. I'm Mike, and in this video I'd like to show you how to keep your various woodworking and gardening blades sharp. Keeping your blades sharp is the best way to get full enjoyment out of your work and to avoid injury. Here are some examples showing you the range of blades that I'm going to be covering. Two sizes of woodworking plane, chisels, scissors, those big ones are wallpaper scissors, retractable handy knives. Now I know these are throwaway replaceable blades, but if you touch them up in a way that I'll show you shortly, you get extended life out of them, as well as the satisfaction of using a sharp tool. Another sort of handy knife. And then in the garden there are various forms of Secateur which need to be kept sharp because they go blunt very quickly, and when they're blunt you start to get frustrated and yanking, which is inclined to bend the blade, and then they'll never work properly again. Gardener shears, just a big version of ordinary scissors. The principle of sharpening is the same, there's just more of it to sharpen. The sharpening technique for various cutting blades is much the same, in the sense that for all of them you need some kind of abrasive tool which is harder than the blade steel in order to put a nice cutting edge on it. But what you have to take into account that every blade that you sharpen has some type of beveling on it to give the sharp edge. Now with an ordinary general cutting knife like that, there's an equal bevel on both sides of the blade, so when I look down there I can see a bevel both sides. The blade is symmetrical in that sense. However, with a wood chisel for example, it's dead flat one side, no sign of beveling, and on the other side we've got a main primary bevel and then a little secondary bevel to give us the cutting edge. The same goes for a plain blade and for scissors. With scissors you have a single bevel pointing to one side, the other side is dead flat in both cases. So what is the angle of the bevel? Well, I suggest that you make a template, because the bevel you require on a plain blade and a chisel blade is 25 degrees like that. It doesn't however apply to scissors. Scissors are an entirely different angle, and you'll see what angle is required when you look at the scissors that you've got. My first demonstration is going to be sharpening this wood chisel on this Carborundum stone. Now Carborundum has been around for a long time, and certainly I've been using this type of sharpening device all of my adult life. In my case it's in two parts. That's the coarse side for rough work, and that's the fine side for finishing work. As you can see, it's a bit messy, and that's because you have to use ordinary oil on the face, and that helps to disperse the metal particles which occur when you're sharpening. Otherwise the metal particles clog up the Carborundum pores and you lose your cutting effect. That means your hands get messy, and you have to be careful not to mess up the fine woodwork that you're doing. Put some oil on there, and I'm going to show you first of all cutting this main primary bevel, so at a very shallow angle. Yeah, I'm pretty well at the 25 degree angle. I'm holding this chisel in such a way that I do my very best to maintain that angle wherever it is on the Carborundum stone. So we don't want to be doing that. That's not the way to do it. We have to maintain the angle. And it comes with experience and practice. When using the Carborundum stone, you need to move your chisel or whatever blade you're sharpening around to use up as much of the length as possible and as much of the width as possible in an even fashion. What you don't want is a groove in there or any hollows. Now truthfully, if you use this for years and years and years, you will get a hollow, in which case you've either got to find a way of flattening it out or buy a new Carborundum stone. So here's a variation on the Carborundum stone. This is called a diamond sharpening stone, but it's not stone actually, it's a thickness of plastic faced with perforated metal, and onto the metal are stuck the diamond particles. Because it's a bit skiddy on the back, I'm using it on some non-slip matting, and the technique that I've already shown you is just the same, except that instead of using oil, use plain water. This one is a coarse one, but you can get them in various grades. Now let's explain why we've got two bevels. So to keep it simple, to get a good cutting edge we need that bevel surface to converge with this one, and we get our cutting edge. However, when in use the chisel will wear quite quickly and you'll lose the cutting edge, so then you have to resharpen. Now instead of resharpening the whole of that area of the primary bevel, what you do, you put the chisel on at the 25-degree angle, then you tilt it up slightly. See that? Tilt it up slightly, and all you need to do is a few strokes to put that secondary bevel on, and that's all that is required to give you back your cutting edge. So that explains why you end up with two bevels. You actually only need one, but it's more convenient to run two because it gives you a quicker sharpening operation. Now one final thing, when you've been sharpening like that, you'll end up with a burr on the edge here. And by a burr I mean the steel itself of the blade curls round in a very microscopic way, and you can feel it. There, I can feel it now. My thumbnail is catching on the burr. So what you do, you very carefully put the flat reverse side of the chisel flat down on the Carborundum stone, press down here, and just 2 or 3 strokes like that will be enough to remove that burr. Now what it can do is transfer the burr to the other side, but you can detect with your thumbnail. If it does, just carefully go like that a couple of times at the correct angle, and then come back to this side and there you've got a nice sharp chisel edge. And over time, when you resharpen like that, the secondary bevel creeps along, and as in my case, that's about 3 millimeters wide. Now I can carry on sharpening with that elevated angle, but eventually what will happen is this secondary bevel will come further and further and further back. So we're getting more and more metal to have to wear away in order to get our cutting edge. That is why from time to time it's best to go back to basics, spend a bit of time, grind off this or otherwise smooth it off, so that you've virtually got no secondary bevel, and then start again. When grinding a chisel, there's one mistake to avoid, and that is overheating the tip of the chisel while you're grinding. Keep a container of water nearby and keep on dipping the chisel in the water to keep the chisel cool. If you overheat the tip, you'll spoil the hardening of the steel and it won't hold a good sharp cutting edge. You have to be very patient and watch the angle that you're grinding at to try and maintain the 25 degrees. We're talking about grinding the primary bevel. Notice also that I'm holding the chisel underneath the wheel. That's because the wheel is rotating this way, and if I hold the chisel there and it digs into the wheel, it could suddenly shoot the chisel away, which could cause a problem. So always touch the grinding wheel so that the wheel is going away from your body. In practice, I don't use the grinding wheel very often. I prefer to use the diamond sharpening stone for cutting my primary bevel, and also I do it fairly often. Rather than have one big long job to do taking half an hour, I'd rather spend 5 minutes more often. That enables me to get the sharpening chore over and done with, and then I can get on with my woodwork. I've demonstrated using the chisel to sharpen and maintain the primary bevel at a certain angle. The same applies to plane blades, same angle, but you might be saying to yourself, how do I maintain that angle? It's very difficult to do it by eye. Well, there are special jigs available, like this one from Stanley, where you insert the blade, this is my plane blade, with the bevel side down. It has two wheels here, and to determine the bevel angle there's a clever little flop down gauge here with 3 positions: 35 degrees, 30 degrees, 25 degrees. We want 25. Tighten up at the back. This is to grip the blade and stop it from slipping in the jig. When we're satisfied, then we can carry on with our honing, and that will maintain the angle that we've set. And it works just the same on a diamond cutting stone. The only thing is you use oil on that and water on this. Don't get oil on that because it will spoil its function. One other thing that can go wrong is that as you sharpen, for some reason or other, you might find that the blade is sharpening at an angle like that or like that. That's probably because when you're honing, too much pressure has been applied to one side of the blade. So to counteract that, apply more pressure on the opposite side of the blade while you're doing the honing. I think I ought to show you how the blade is put back into a bench plane and also a block plane. The two are different, so I'll deal with them separately. First of all, the plane blade has to be assembled with a backing plate like this. There's a little screw here, a special one which you mustn't lose. Always look after that and know where it is. That goes in there. Then we slide forward the backing plate so that its front edge is nearly as far as the cutting edge of the plane blade, so you'd stop short by about 1 millimetre. Tighten up the little screw here, and we can put this into the plane body. The bevel goes downwards. Bevel downwards on a bench plane. Now that little nib there has to engage in the slot there, that slot on the backing plate. So bevel downwards. There you are, I've engaged the nib in that slot. Now we should be able to just slip on the locking plate, which has got this kidney shaped hole. Slip that over the screw head, lower the lever, and we're all locked in place and ready to go. For the block plane, it's more simple, but note, On the bench plane the bevel is downwards, on the block plane it is upwards. Also, we've only got two parts to load in. One of those little notches there has to engage with this nib here. Once that's in place, we can slip that over there, turn that lever across, and that's locked the blade in. Now let's have a look at the variation in technique for sharpening handy knives and scissors. First of all, a handy knife. As I said before, it's got a bevel on each side, so it's a case of using the sharpening tool evenly on both faces. Now this is another diamond sharpening tool. It's quite fine. If we just dip it in water and pick up the angle that's already established on the blade and just do that, it'll bring your blade back. Now that process is a waste of time if you've already got lumps out of your blade and it's really blunt. Now for scissors we can use the same process. I'm picking up the angle of the bevel on the scissor blade. Do it evenly, about the same treatment to each blade. Now if you remember, I told you about the burr that can occur on something like a chisel blade. It's possible to happen equally on the scissors, but when you go like that with the scissors to close them, that cleans off the burr. And use a similar technique for your garden shears, making sure that the sharpening device picks up the bevel that's already established on the blade. And again, if there's any burr at all, it'll be cleaned off by that action there. Although it's a bit messy, I could equally use my oil stone like this. And now we come to garden secateurs, which are available in different cutting designs. This one has got two cutters which work like shears or like scissors, except that the blade is curved. Although there are two blades, only this one with the big bevel on actually needs to be sharpened. So this one actually has got a main primary bevel plus a secondary one, and it's dead flat on the other side. So do the best you can with that curved cutting edge, and if you do that often you should find that the secateurs work really well. Don't let them get really blunt. This is a slightly different one because it's only got one cutting blade which moves down onto this curved anvil with a groove in it. Make sure the groove is always clear of debris and then work on the blade. Now in this case the blade has got a very slight bevel on both sides. That one was only beveled on one side. So do the best you can with your diamond sharpener. Do that often and you should get a lot of use out of the secateurs. And now I'm going to show you a third device for sharpening blades. I've already shown you using the Carborundum stone, the diamond sharpening stone, and now we're going to look at using silicon carbide sandpaper, otherwise known as wet and dry sandpaper. And I've got a grit here 1000, which is very fine, 600 and 240. It's recommended that you somehow stick these down onto a very flat, perfectly smooth surface such as glass, I don't like the idea of using glass, so I've got a piece of 10mm thick Perspex or acrylic sheet. To make these stick down, you can either use spray adhesive, but then you've got a problem of getting them off to replace them, or you can stick them down with PVC tape, or as I do, use water. First of all, we need to wet the surface quite well. Put it in place and then roll it out. This is a wallpaper joint roller, but it's a good idea for, see now that's pretty firm on the plastic. Effectively what we're doing, we're squeezing all the air out so the water acts as a sort of adhesive. This is the coarse one and that's the fine one. So if we put some water on there and using our normal technique, just backwards and forwards, maintaining that angle of 25 degrees. Then when you come to do the final edge, you tilt the chisel up like I showed you before and do that, and you work your way across the different grades, finishing up on the fine grade, and then if you've got a little bit of burr on there, just carefully hold the chisel dead flat and go backwards and forwards like that. Now, I find that this method is okay, but I wouldn't like to use it to sharpen a very blunt blade because you'll be there forever. Also, this stuff does wear out and you've got to replace it. I hope that video has helped you understand more about sharpening different sorts of blades. I do urge you to sharpen often, especially when you've finished the job, so that the blade is ready next time you want to work with it. If you leave blades till they get really blunt, they're horrible to work with, or you can't work with them at all, and it takes such a time to bring them back to a good sharpened state. If you like my videos and would like to subscribe in order to get automatic notification of when the next video is launched, please click on the circular icon appearing now on the left. Otherwise you can click one of the rectangular icons coming on screen now to watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll join us again very soon.